Welcome to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share a recent conversation with three leaders from our Black Professional MBA student organization, Mike Shipp, Linda Hartman, and Steven Daley. In this conversation, I talk with Mike, Linda, and Steven about their backgrounds, how they decided to pursue an MBA, what led them to Darden, what attracted them to serving as leaders in the Black Professional MBA student organization, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here's my interview with Mike Shipp, Linda Hartman, and Steven Daley. Mike, Linda, Steven, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you for having us.
Great to have you here. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day. It feels like a great time to connect. Have you just had it for at least two of you? Just had a weekend residency. Steven, the part-time program continues apace, and also we're about a week, about a week or so after the National Black Conference up in Philadelphia. So a lot to talk about here. Mike, how's everything going?
Things are really good. Like you said, we just got off National Black, had OGR, and I'm sure if keeping into this, they know what OGR by this point. And then there are a few of us, Steven and I, we're actually going to Italy here in a few weeks with the program. So really excited about all the things that are happening.
Linda, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. As I say, similar to Mike, it was great being up in Philadelphia for the National Black MBA Conference. I'm sure we'll get into more of it later on in this podcast, but it was a really great experience for all of us that were able to go up there. We had a chance as exec students to connect with a lot of the residential students, which was great. Also had a chance to connect with a lot of great companies up there. So overall, very good experience. Also touch on a little bit, but we're in our second year of the program, so enjoying that. Enjoying the current set of electives. Had a chance to be in a couple classes I'm really enjoying. So looking forward to continuing through this next quarter.
Yeah, you're in electives, and I do think for a lot of students, or at least this is the impression that I get. Once you hit electives, you can start to feel it. Like you start to feel like graduation is coming. You're picking your classes now. The pace is maybe a little bit. It loses some of the. You get a little bit more time back on your schedule. At least that's the impression that I get from students. Does that feel right? Is that square with your experience, Linda?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty much in line. I think the nice thing about the program is that there's a wide range of electives that you can choose from. So you can choose things that are a little bit more in your lane. Also, kind of you touched on that. You can design your elective schedule to fit a little bit better with your personal life. For this particular quarter, I've had a chance to be in a couple electives that I found really, really worthwhile. Obviously, I still have a couple more weeks, but one in particular, leadership, diversity, and leveraging difference with Professor Morgan Roberts has been great. It's a smaller class. And for me, I found it to be really just a nice format that we're able to have really in-depth conversations with the smaller class. I think that's a little bit different than the larger sections where we have great conversations, but there's, when there's 60, 65 people, it's a little bit hard to have a very intimate conversation. So overall, just had a really good time with it.
Well, that's great. Well, Linda and Mike, as our listeners are going to put together here, both in the Executive MBA program, but we're also joined by Steven Daley in our part-time program. Steven, part-time program, weeknight classes, humming along, still in the core curriculum. How's everything going?
Yeah, it's going really well. Feel like a year in now, kind of have a good sense of the schedule and everything under my belt. And like Mike said, we have the Italy trip coming up. We just signed up for electives, so can kind of see the core curriculum winding down. So it's really, I really feel like a year in, I have a good sense of everything and excited to hit the second half of the program.
Well, that's great. Yeah, it's exciting to hear about the elective slate for these first few elective quarters in the part-time program. Actually, we're going to record a podcast about that as well. Lots happening. And this is something of an annual tradition. We will generally have the Black. What was the Black Executive MBA Student Organization is now the Black Professional MBA Student Organization leadership on the podcast to talk about what's going on with the club, what your plans are for the year ahead. So excited to have you here today. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit more about you and your background. So Mike, tell us a little bit more about you and how'd you end up at Darden?
Yeah, appreciate that. So a little bit about me. I'm from Philly. I am in Philly. Spent some time in DC, spent some time in the Navy, bouncing around the East Coast, over in Okinawa, Japan. I love being a product of the Philadelphia public school system. So that's something that I'm really proud of. After getting out the Navy, spent some time at Community College of Philly, where I got my associate's degree. And then finished up with my undergrad at University of District of Columbia, UDC. Actually finished my undergrad in May 2022, and then started with the program in August. So quite the transition there. Aside from that, I've worked in Bank of America. I've worked with a few different government agencies. But something I'm really proud of is being a podcast host for a podcast called Perfect Time in Multisport, where we get to talk about mental health and normalizing people struggling with mental health and how they're using athletics as a resource. So it's a little bit about me and some things I'm doing.
All right. So every day that we get to have a fellow podcast host on the podcast. So that's awesome.
I'm happy to be here. I love storytelling, and connecting with people.
All right. Well, Linda, tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so from a different region of the country. So I'm originally from the Midwest. I spent most of my childhood in the Minneapolis area of Minnesota. After high school, I headed to the University of Wisconsin-Madison for undergrad, and I majored in real estate there through its business school. And after graduation, it was a little bit of a tricky time. It was at the end of the last recession. So not the best time to have a major in real estate, but I ended up being very lucky that I was able to find a job in the commercial real estate sector. So I actually started off my career at Cushman & Wakefield. And after working there for a couple of years, I had the opportunity to pursue a different side of the industry, and that aligned more with my interest in community development and affordable housing. So I've been in that space for over about a decade now. I currently work at DC Housing Finance Agency, and I'm really grateful to work there with this great group of individuals that are all passionate about equity. And the agency does a lot of work to promote both owner and renter occupied housing opportunities in the District of Columbia. So really grateful to be part of that organization. In terms of how I ended up Darden, so pursuing an MBA has been on my radar for quite a long time. And I always found it a little bit tricky to find the right time to do it. I think a lot of people can relate to that. And I think the short story is there's never a right time to do it. You just have to just make it work. But I would say for myself, once I moved back to DC a couple of years ago, it felt kind of the right place, right time, right place to do it both professionally and personally. And Darden, obviously, as everyone knows, is number 3 in the country. So great program. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Linda. Mike, you'd mentioned that you started your MBA program effectively immediately after concluding your undergrad. Did you always know you wanted to do an MBA? How did you figure out the timing? Like, walk us through all that.
Yeah. How to figure out the time. I'm still like figuring out a lot of those things, to be honest. But going in the Navy, enlisted, like education just really wasn't a priority for my family, and therefore it wasn't a priority for me. But as I got off active duty, very similar to Linda, when she graduated undergrad in 2009, it was just trying to figure out what is that thing I wanted to do, but not really having many options. Being a adult student at Community College Philly, being a 30-year-old student at University of DC, I've always had to work while going to school. So I never really had an opportunity to be in a quasi even traditional program. So knowing that I had a pretty complex background, I wanted to have an MBA be that like glue, right? That thing that can say, hey, I was in a program with the cohort, we finished together, we navigated through things, listening to this podcast, amplifying, the work of you, amplifying the work of Ashley Robinson, who was here. Both of you really, even her just forcing me to say, hey, make sure you apply. after telling myself, no, this doesn't make sense. But both of you were kind of those people that helped me believe that I can be here. So once once things opened up, once I graduated, knew that it was a no-brainer. A lot of the reasons Linda already mentioned. So here I am.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. I always enjoy getting people's stories out there because a lot of our listeners are wrestling with these same things that you're talking about. Like, oh, I could do this. I don't have the right background. It's not the right time. All of these kinds of things people say to themselves as they think about doing an executive MBA program or a part-time program or whatever the case may be. Steven, tell us a little bit more about your story and how you ended up here at Darden.
Yeah, so I originally grew up outside of Boston. Played basketball, football growing up, so really was hoping to play a sport in college. Ended up playing basketball at Colby College, a small liberal arts school in Central Maine. During my 2 summers there, I had interned at Raytheon after my sophomore and junior year. So ended up getting a full-time offer there, and that was really my first experience with working in kind of a corporate setting, getting experience to the defense industry specifically, and that's really what brought me down to DC. I've held a few different roles across the aerospace and defense sector, mostly in strategy and finance. And yeah, that's really, like I said, we're moving up to DC. I've moved to Northern Virginia in like March 2021. And soon after I moved, Darden actually announced the opening of the part-time MBA program. And graduating in 2019, it was a really good fit for me as compared to the executive program, just from a timeline standpoint. So really good fit. You know, with liberal arts, you kind of learn a lot about everything, and you're not really focusing on really the specifics of things sometimes. So I was an econ, environmental policy double major up there, but working in corporate finance, I felt like there was a lot of kind of drinking from the fire hose and learning by doing type thing. So I felt like an MBA would be a good way for me to bridge the gap. And similarly, when I looked at a lot of the C-suite executives at my company or different companies across my industry, I saw an MBA was a common theme across their background. So that was another driver for me. And Darden's been a great fit, just being able to continue to work as I'm getting my MBA and doing kind of implementing some of the stuff I'm learning in the classroom real time during work has been a really good benefit for me professionally. So it's been a really good experience thus far, and definitely would recommend it for those who are living in the DC, Northern Virginia, Maryland area that want to continue to work and pursue their MBA, because it's been a really positive experience for me and my classmates thus far.
Thank you, Steven. For our listeners, the part-time program is more of an evening-based schedule, so the students in that program are very local. Most of the students live within 30 miles or less of our location here in Roslyn. The Executive MBA program, we have travelers in that program. About 2/3 of the students come from within 60 miles or less of our location in Roslyn. But we have 1/3 or so of a typical Executive MBA class that may travel from further away, places like Philadelphia. Mr. Shipp here on the call, but also we got folks in the Midwest, Southeast, far West. We even currently have a student who travels in from Indonesia. So it can be done. Linda, I want to talk a little bit about the transition to being an executive MBA student. I know you're in the second year of the program, taking electives now, but if you can remember back when you started the program, what was the adjustment like? Were there things that stand out to you when you think back on that time?
Yeah, so I would say I had a chance to connect with a former alumni of the program before I entered it. So I felt like I got a little bit of a warning on how just to kind of approach the first year. And I don't say that in a bad way. I think that, all of us are working professionals and doing school. And so I think it just provides a little bit of a unique challenge because, you already, I think in your work, all of us work a lot. I think that's fair to say. And so now you're adding another thing on top of that. And so I think the biggest thing for me the first year was really acknowledging the time constraints and really getting better at prioritizing. I think that I will fully acknowledge I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. And so that's more of like checking myself and saying, you have 2 hours to do this. Make the best of that 2 hours instead of just being so focused on getting that one thing perfect. And I think that once you kind of, a lot of this, the unique thing about you, Darden, I feel like, is that you're challenged academically, but I think you're also challenged personally. And you really realize how you work And I think once you kind of identify those things and recognize those realities, I think you're better equipped to kind of change those. And all those things that I think I've gone through, and I feel like others in the program have gone through in the first year, are things where, you acknowledge those kind of faults that you have and fix them. And then in the end, those are things that I think are going to enable you to be a better leader. So I can say for myself, recognizing time constraints and working with those, that's going to be a reality of being a leader. And so you just kind of get better equipped. And I feel in the second year, I'm much better positioned than I was my first year. But with all that said, I think it's also very important to have fun your first year.
Yeah, there's a lot of things competing for your time. I think that's probably one of the big challenges, right? You have work, life, and school. But even like, for example, once you get into the program, you have a weekend residency, on-grounds residency, as it's been referred to here. There is so much happening during those 3 days. You have typically 12, 13 class sessions. There's social opportunities on Friday night, on Saturday night, all kinds of things you can do during that weekend. So how do you make all this stuff work and manage your energy? I think it can be helpful just to be clear about what your priorities are and what you want to make sure you get out of the experience and spend some time thinking about that. So thank you, Linda, for sharing that. Resonates a lot with what people have talked about here on the podcast. That sort of letting go of things that maybe feel like a perfectionist. You feel like things have to be just so. You have to relax on some of that. So Steven, how about for you? What was the big adjustment for you, or what were the adjustments for you as you started the part-time program?
Yeah, I would say time management is really the biggest thing for me. Between working and your life and then school, you have a lot of competing priorities. So just understanding what you want to prioritize, what you need to give up in order to prioritize it has been the biggest thing for me. I mean, you have on a given week, like I say, probably 10 to 50 pages of case readings and then kind of the concepts that go with it. So synthesizing all that, understanding it, being able to speak confidently on it in class, that takes some work. And then you have your 40-hour, 50-hour a week job and kind of any personal commitments along with that. It's a lot to balance. So just like I said, understanding what to prioritize and what you want to care about and continue to push forward as you're in the program is really the biggest challenge I've had to overcome and make sure I'm prioritizing the right things and using my time effectively when I have it.
Do you feel like you've gotten better at that now that you're here in quarter 7, quarter 8 of the program?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely a balancing act. Like a story for me, for instance, I wanted to pursue an accounting certification while I was in the program. So last winter, I was studying for that. And I realized trying to juggle 3 things in terms of work, the accounting certification, and then school was a really difficult challenge for me. I probably wouldn't do that again. I recommend it for somebody else. So when you kind of add a third thing into things, like I have classmates planning weddings or kind of going on trips and whatnot. And I feel like when you add a third thing into everything, that's when it gets a lot to balance and juggle. So that was a lesson for me. And but I think like Linda said, it's important to use your time effectively and understand what to prioritize. So it's definitely a good lesson and something as a leader moving forward, I'll continue to use and I'll rely on in this experience I'm developing here.
Thank you, Steven. Mike, you had mentioned earlier that you've always worked while going to school here. And so I imagine that wasn't so novel for you, but being an MBA program, everybody's got adjustments to make. So what were the adjustments for you?
Yeah, I love the academic experiences I've had, but they do not compare to the academic experience that I'm having at Darden. So it's a lot different level. So the biggest thing, to be honest, in transition for me has been like just that self-talk. I sometimes struggle with confidence. I've struggled with confidence in understanding like, hey, that this is a space that I belong in because I've had such a non-traditional journey to get here. I remember even saying this to some of the other classmates, and Linda, she was actually the one that amplified, hey, you probably worked just as hard, if not even harder, just because of the lack of resources you've had, and now we're here. So I would even say I probably wasted a good year because I questioned, is this a place that I belong? And realizing that I'm still here, I really wanted to make sure I just changed a lot of the inputs so I can get some different outputs. And part of that is even showing up as a student leader, which brings us here in this conversation now, to realize how much I do belong, and make sure other people that I identify with realize that they also belong here.
Yeah, it's a very important message that self-talk is particularly important when you're doing something as challenging as an executive MBA program. We try to remind people at the outset that if you're in a seat here, you've earned that seat. You deserve to be here. You're here because we believe that you can be successful here. And it can still be hard to accept that message at times. So, and we know that. And so I appreciate that as well. So let's talk about the Black Professional MBA Student Organization. Mike, tell us a little bit more about what this organization is all about.
Yeah. So first, even before talking about what it's about, I love to make sure we're just amplifying the people that got us to where we are. So Erica Booker and Corbin Norman, back in 2017, they were the two that, had this idea to create a space like then it was called the Black Executive MBA Association. So now with the part-time program being a part of our community, we wanted to make sure we were inclusive to all cohorts and all programs. So we are now, as people have seen, the Darden Black Professional MBA Student Association. And I was actually listening to the podcast and, just doing research and reminding myself of like what the purpose of BPMBA is really just a space where, again, we can have those conversations and telling people that, hey, I feel like I don't belong. And then somebody like Linda saying, shut up, you actually do. And just, again, a space where we can have those conversations, collaborate with people, sometimes, argue with people that we share the same identity with, for a purpose of not only getting to Darden, but making sure we're getting through Darden, and then making sure we're staying engaged and connecting once we leave the space, because that's when the real work really starts. So that's what we're doing. That's what the purpose of this community is. So I'm happy to be a part of that.
Linda, did you know that you wanted to be involved with the Black Professional MBA as a student leader? That was something that you wanted to make part of your MBA experience?
Yeah, as I say, I mean, I'm very happy that I was able to connect with Mike early on in the program. We had a chance to think, I don't know if we ever actually in a section together, but I feel like we always just were able to talk in between. Yeah, as I say, I feel like this has been now like, it's a long time ago, last year. But we always had a chance to connect. And so, I was able to connect with Mike and be involved in this and in more of a leadership capacity, which I'm very grateful for. I think for myself, when I went to University of Wisconsin-Madison, one of the really great things about that was I was part of, we call the Powers Nap group there. And we really were able to, group was primarily with historically disadvantaged minorities. We had a sister group called the Chancellors, but between those two groups, we were really able to have a really great support system. Some of my closest friends still to this day are from that. And so for me, I think I'm just an advocate for having spaces where people can be unapologetically themselves. And I think that sometimes in certain environments, that may not be something that people feel as comfortable doing. So, for me being in this leadership position, that's my main goal is that, we create that space. And Mike kind of touched on this, like I can especially say for our exec program, all of us are very different. We are not monolithic. We have very different viewpoints on things. But I think that the one beautiful thing about that is that we created space where we can disagree and have constructive conversations, which is something that, I just, even beyond just this group, I also just really, like I would say my favorite experiences at Darden have been where I've been able to have really just great, honest conversations with people. So glad to support it kind of in this group as well.
Steven, did you know that you wanted to make this part of your part-time experience? That, as Mike noted here, Black Executive MBA Student Organization initially focused on the executive MBA experience. Now that we have part-time students, expanding to include part-time students. Is this something that you knew you wanted to participate in?
Yeah, when I was looking at business schools and kind of doing my research, one thing that jumped out to me is the BEMBA at the time actually reached out to prospective African American students and had a networking event, and really that was big for me in making my decision in terms of Darden having affinity-based networking and groups set up for different identities, and them recognizing me as a Black professional and looking at me through that context was really big for me in order to meet with other students, understand what their experience is. And JB Norcott was actually someone that I connected with through that networking experience, and he mentored me throughout the application process. And getting into Darden, I credit him a lot for helping me through that. So that really set the tone for me. And once I got a chance to connect with Mike and Linda and bridge the gap into the part-time program, that was definitely really important for me. And I'm excited for all that we can do together now that we have the executive and part-time program working together across these two groups.
And kind
Well,
of
let's talk a little. Yeah, go ahead, please, Linda.
I should say, kind of picking back off what Steven just mentioned. I know earlier this year, I had a chance to go to the Black Alumni Weekend in UVA, and it was really nice to be in a room full of alumni and hear their experience currently in the professional capacity. And I think that's just one great benefit that we have is that it doesn't just stop and just this ExecMBA program format, like it'll continue on. And I think that all of us can kind of agree on this is that, we're very lucky, the way I say it, of being in the DMV area where there are so many Black professionals, and to be able to plug into that Darden community, I think is really something that's unique and great.
That's great. And we always remind folks that when you come to Darden, you get multiple networks. Most immediate networks are classmates, but you also have all the students who are learning here out of Sam's Family Grounds, all the working professional students. You have Darden MBAs generally, UVA broadly. So lots of different people for you to meet and connect with. So let's talk a little bit more about what Black Professional MBA has been up to this year. Mike, any events that you would want to highlight? Any things that you've been doing, initiatives that you want to mention here?
Yeah, and definitely we have a ton that we're working on, and I know everybody else in the call has some things that they want to make sure they amplify. But one thing that has been like a priority for me is making sure we're forming like the appropriate leadership structure. While there are things we want to do, there's nothing that we can do without having a really solid structure. Especially with this now new format being inclusive of the part-time program, we want to understand, hey, what does that look like? What is actually needed? And what are some things that we can put in place so future leaders of the Black Professional MBA Network community can have those resources they need to implement the changes they want to see. But just to understanding that, again, we do have some things that we want to make sure we amplify. I would actually pass it off to Linda to kind of speak about some other things that we're working on.
Yeah, so I think that one of the big things that we've been kind of focused on is that really just kind of building the connection across all program formats. I know we've all had a chance to talk about it. That obviously Mike and I are representing the exec format. Steven is representing the part-time format, but there's also a large group down in Charlottesville that are the residential. And so I think it's really something that we have on our radar is to really make sure that we are all interacting with each other. At the end of the day, the majority of us will end up in the Mid-Atlantic professionally, and just the way things are, we will all probably cross paths, 6-3 separation. Like we'll have those overlaps. And so we really want to make sure that we're taking the time to kind of leverage this opportunity while we're on the same kind of stage in our lives to be able to connect. So I think that's been the biggest focus. We're hopefully going to have I think we already have in the works, some events that we would like to do across all formats to kind of really start those relationships. Also, kind of mentioned this at the beginning of this podcast. We had a chance to go to Philadelphia for the National Black MBA Conference, a chance to connect with a lot of the residential students there. It was nice to be able to go through that process with them, have a chance to talk to them about what they're interested in. I think that, all of us are working professionals, and some of the students in the residential also have work experience. And between all of our networks, there's a lot of opportunities there. And so I think it's just, again, creating those opportunities to talk and say, hey, you're interested in this. I know so-and-so that did this. And so I think that's a big thing that we're working on. Also, kind of along the same lines as that is that next year, the National Black MBA Conference is actually going to be in DC. And so that's going to provide a really great opportunity for us to be able to have a higher attendance across all formats. But also one of the nice things that we did in Philadelphia is have an alumni happy hour networking event, which was really great. We had a chance to connect with some alumni. I know I had a chance to talk to somebody who's 2008 quite a bit. And so I think that, for it being in DC, it's going to really have great turnout and really give people more opportunity to connect across all formats, but also across all years.
Steven, anything you would want to share here that Black Professional MBA has been working on or looking forward to here?
Yeah, I've been really focused on how we can bridge the gap with the broader UVA community. The program team does a great job of creating experiences that are consistent across all formats through a one Darden mindset, but we want to make sure we're also tapping into the broader UVA community. So this is why we're encouraging members of our group to join the Black Alumni Weekend, which is held on grounds April 19th through 21. And we challenge all Darden Black alumni listening to this to sign up as a committee member and encourage all the members that we can to show up in April, because that's a really great event and a really great way to connect with different people across the Darden alumni network and broader UVA network. Along with that, really just making sure we're bridging the gap across all formats. Like I mentioned before, that was a big part of why I joined this group, and wanted to make sure the executive and part-times are working together and making sure we're leveraging the broader network we can create together. So that's been another big focus of mine as part of being on this leadership team.
And real quick, to just wrap up, even with that, we have a really unique opportunity here. All clubs, all Darden in general, especially a professional format, because we do have someone like Steven who is going to be staying here at Darden a year beyond when we are here, right? So now the things that we're trying to implement, we have an advocate that can help facilitate those things. And then last, just engagement, as Steven mentioned, not only engagement with the broader UVA community, but especially within the Darden alumni network. Linda kind of alluded to it a bit. Some of the phenomenal alumni come out and support the current students, and we want to make sure we're creating those opportunities throughout the year. So as a call to action, making sure people send us a note. I know we'll talk about this as we wrap up, but we want to get you engaged, right? We want to have some Zoom sessions quarterly where we're just bringing people together to talk about things we're doing. When we talk about Darden being that number 3 school, it is not because of the students that are here, it's largely because of the students that have come and gone. So we want to make sure we're tapping into that network, especially and under the context of this conversation, especially Black alumni that have been in Darden. So we'll talk more about some next steps and how you can be a part of that community. But we want you a part. We want you here, even though you graduated.
Well, I love the emphasis around bringing people together. I think we get that question from prospective students a lot about how do executive MBA students connect with full-time MBA students in Charlottesville, or part-time students with executive MBA students or full-time MBA students. And it's great to hear how the Black Professional MBA Student Organization has prioritized this and has really made this a point of emphasis this year. As we do stress to the point that was made by Steven, that it's really all Darden, right? Everybody is part of the same network, and so it's great to think about clubs and organizations being this kind of connective tissue. So, Mike, what are you looking forward to in the coming months? Obviously, Black Professional MBA's got a lot going on as always, but are there things that you have circled on your calendar?
Gosh, I don't know why I said so loud. So hopefully that can be edited out. And if not, looking forward to Italy. Italy is amazing. I've never been. Looking forward to spending time with Steven. we, again, just because of me being here in Philly, and being in DC, and us really not having the opportunity to overlap. Looking forward to that. And then, gosh, I feel like there was another thing. Yeah, but it may come back. So if you're curious about what I was thinking about, feel free to reach out and I'll love to tell you about it if I remember.
Yeah, the Italy trip is actually a part-time MBA global elective, and we have 4 executive MBA students who are joining on that. There are also, at the same time, 2 executive MBA global residencies that are running. We have a group going to Argentina, a group going to Finland, Estonia. As you may know, in the executive MBA program, students are required to participate in 1 global residency if they're an IMBA format student, 4 global residencies if they're a GEMBA format student. To our listeners, you probably heard this before, but if you are wondering, if I go on 1 global residency, will I want to go on a second one? The answer is yes. Typically, most people want to, once they travel, they want to travel more. Mike?
I have something I actually want to add to that because I'm also a GEMBA student, and there are 2 really passionate people and adventurous people that our classmate Levi, he's gone to Argentina and then he's flying over to Italy. And then our classmate Courtney, I believe she's going to the Finland trip and then she's flying to Italy. So there's a unique opportunity to go on those back-to-back global residencies, which is really exciting.
Yeah, never been done. I can say that this is the first time we've had a part-time MBA global elective. And in case you're wondering, it's an elective experience for part-time MBA students, not required to participate in a global course, but many students will likely choose to do so, is what we expect. So we have, I think, around 20 or so students going on this first trip to Italy. So Linda, what are you looking forward to in the coming months?
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing all the pictures from those global residency trips. I already had mine, so had a great time in Germany over the summer. But I think for me, in terms of the next few months, I mentioned before, I'm looking forward to being able to do a joint event with both all formats for the Black Professional MBA group. Also looking forward to what Steven mentioned, the Black Alumni Weekend. That'll be next April. And then just in general, I think I'm just looking forward to the next set of electives that are coming up next quarter. I'm going back a little bit to the quant area. So it's going to be a little bit of a return, but looking forward to those classes. I always enjoy taking classes that I don't really know much about. So I'm looking forward to the FinTech class in particular, for example. But yeah, I guess continue on and just looking forward to, continue through the electives and then the holidays.
All right, Steven, what are you looking forward to? I know we talked about, core and then electives on the horizon. So what do you have circled on your calendar? All right, Steven, we can't hear you, just so you know.
Oh, sorry about that. I guess I was on mute. Yeah, really looking forward to finishing up the core curriculum, kind of wrapping up these last 2 quarters. And then, as Mike mentioned, looking forward to the Italy trip and getting to travel abroad with some of my classmates.
How did you decide you wanted to do a global elective?
Yeah, it was something that during the recruitment process, Darden really emphasized that was going to be a part of the curriculum and the schedule. So me personally, being a college athlete, I didn't get to study abroad. So really looking forward to get that experience as part of my MBA degree.
All right. Well, this is the next to last question, because we are going to talk about next steps for people who are listening to this podcast who are interested in learning more about Black Professional MBA. But Mike, I wonder if I can come to you for a piece of advice that you would share with our listeners, something that you would encourage them to consider as they think about their own MBA journeys.
So 2 pieces. If you're thinking about it, just do it. What I love about Darden, I'm not sure you all still do this, but there are ways to get your application fee waived. So that makes the barrier of entry a lot lower, if not completely removing it. So the thing is now finding time to submit that application and at least consider it. But the key advice, if that I want to make sure I share, it's kind of a quote, but yeah. If they let you in the room, don't be afraid to take up space in the room. So if you do apply and you say, hey, this is something that now I've gotten accepted to, I want to take that step forward. Avoid what I did, which is essentially waste time by questioning if you belong in the room, and just know that if you're there, you're there, and take up space while you're there until they tell you to stop coming there. So that's not only in life, well, for Darden, but that's also in life too.
Yeah, and you're right. We do offer application fee waivers. There are a number of fee waivers that we have for folks. If you're a military veteran, you Teach for America, Volunteer Peace Corps, et cetera. But we also have, just for everybody out there, an engagement-based fee waiver, which really just requires 2 steps: to participate in a conversation and join us for an event. It could be an in-person or an online event. Once you complete both steps, you'll earn an application fee waiver and save yourself $250. So pretty easy. And I think most people like saving $250 if they can. So Linda, piece of advice for our listeners, something you would encourage them to keep in mind?
Yeah, I think that the biggest piece of advice I have is to really just enjoy your time at Darden, both the academic and non-aspects of Darden. It's really a great opportunity to connect with people that are very different from you. And I think that it's really just, I'm a big fan, again, of having just conversations with people, getting to know something a little bit different. And, in our cohort, I can say that we have a wide range of people from different industries, different background, different ages, different stages of life. And really just, be open to having maybe slightly uncomfortable conversations with people, because that's the best way to learn. And it's the best way also to connect with people. It really provides a little bit more context, maybe beyond just the conversations you might have in the classroom. But I think it's really a great opportunity to get more insight into, just the world and broader outside of Darden. So that's probably the biggest advice I have for people. And, also just keep in mind that a lot of the relationships you're going to establish at Darden will be long-term. And so really just, make sure you invest in those.
Yeah, we are constantly trying to remind people that this is not a transactional experience. This is intended to be something that's transformational, where you really have an opportunity to build relationships for life, as noted. And it does come down to intention now. It comes down to how you approach all of this and how you invest in the experience. So, Mike, if somebody's interested in learning more about the Black Professional MBA student organization, how can they do that? What's a good next step for them from here?
Good next steps. There are a few. Obviously, we're here because we want to be a resource to people. So definitely using us as that resource and refilling. I will speak for myself, because I don't want, Linda, you can say yes if you give consent.
Yes, you can talk to me. Yes.
So Linda and I, we've given consent. So reach out to us if you have questions. I love connecting with humans. I know the robots are going to take over here soon, so I love connecting with humans as long as we can, as much as I can. But aside from that, we do have a LinkedIn group. If you're an alumni of Darden, make sure you look for that LinkedIn group. It is UVA, Darden School of Business, Black Executive MBA. Again, some language in that may be changing, but that's what it is today. If you are having issues with finding that, again, reach out to us and we'll make sure we'll direct you in the right place. Or if you can't find us on LinkedIn, social media, absolutely send us an email. Linda, Steven, and I, we check that email pretty regularly. That is BEMBA leadership@darden.virginia.edu. Again, that is BEMBA leadership@darden.virginia.edu.
Thank you. Lots of ways to connect with you. And I will say to our listeners, if you have any trouble tracking these folks down, we can always help with an introduction. Just reach out to us on the admissions team. Mike, Linda, Steven, so appreciate your being on the call today. It's always great hearing what the clubs and organizations are up to. Thanks for all your work on behalf of our community here at Darden.
Thanks for allowing us to share space and share perspective.
All right. Well, have a great rest of the day, and look forward to seeing you around San Assembly grounds again soon.
Same to you. Have a good one.
And that was my interview with Mike Shipp, Linda Hartman, and Steven Daley, 3 leaders in our Black Professional MBA student organization. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at exec, that's EXEC, MBA@darden.virginia.edu. Till next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.